the absolute legend. Look, nobody works harder in October than this guy. I mean that. Nobody. You look everywhere. Ken Rosenthal is there. And where do you have to look now? Right here. Let's bring him in, our special guest today, Ken Rosenthal. Ken, thank you so much for joining me, man.
Thank you, Ben.
Of course. Hey, let's get right into it. It's obviously playoff time, but before we get into playoffs, I want to talk about a team that I thought was certainly going to be in the playoffs. An extremely talented team. Some big news coming out of San Diego today with Jayce Tingler being fired. What is the latest on the Padres coaching search? Where do you see this team going for their managerial search?
Ben, I don't really know the answer to that question. And I say that because the obvious thing to do would be to hire an experienced manager. They've now had under A.J. Preller 2 first-time major league managers fired. Andy Green was the first, and now Jayce Tingler today. So you would think as the pendulum swings, it would go back the other way. Now, right. Who might that be? Obviously, the hottest name has been Bruce Bochy. Bruce Bochy has managed the Padres before. But as we wrote in The Athletic last week, would Bruce Bochy want to work for general manager A.J. Preller, who is perceived by some to be a very hands-on guy, a guy that is not so easy to work for? And if you're Bruce Bochy, is that the opportunity you want, or do you want to wait for something else? How do you view it? I don't know. But I would expect the answer would be an experienced manager.
Yep, cool. Let's stick in the NL West in a game that's took place tonight. The Dodgers, Max Muncy. What is the latest on Max Muncy? To me, that is a very underrated injury for them. That's a big key piece for that team. What can we expect moving forward from Max Muncy?
Well, that's a good question. And obviously, that's an injury that only he and the Dodgers know how it will improve and progress and all of that. I'm not sure to expect, if anything, from Max Muncy. And it is a big blow. They've got Matt Beattie, they've got Albert Pujols, they've got Bellinger they can play over there. It's not as if they don't have players, but Max Muncy has been a huge part of that team. Probably their leading MVP candidate of the guys who have been on the team all season. I'm not talking about Scherzer and Trey Turner. Offensively, defensively, he has been excellent. So with Muncy out, depends obviously if the Dodgers advance, but if they do advance and he's not there, it's a problem.
Yeah, I love Matt. I think Max Muncy is a very underrated piece in that lineup and doesn't get enough love. That's a big missing piece. Sticking with some playoff teams, the Chicago White Sox. Carlos Rodon, huge part to this team. I don't know what's going to happen with him. Where are they going to pitch him in the rotation? Have you heard anything about that? His last 2 starts, velo's been down, hasn't gone deep into games. A little concerning from my end. What can we expect from him in the series against the Astros?
I'm not sure. They've given him a lot of rest. They haven't given him a full endorsement on his health, his quality, and any of that. They basically have been kind of close to the vest and probably taking it day by day to some extent, seeing how he is physically. Obviously, they're better with him than without him, but I don't know that we can expect too much from Rodon in the postseason based on what we saw in the final month or so of the regular season. Actually, almost 2 months. So if he's right, yeah, great. But I don't know that he's right. The White Sox really are not indicating right.
Yeah, I'm with you. And sticking along the injury theme here, the wild card game the other night, JD Martinez clearly didn't play. Freak injury, tweaked his ankle on second base and running from the dugout. Will he be on the roster in the ALDS against the Rays?
No decision on that yet. He took some light drills today, and that ankle blew up. We know that much. But whether he is able to play or not remains to be seen. Of course, they can DH him, so that takes a little pressure off the leg. He's not in the field, not moving around as much. But at the same time, it sounded, at least initially, like it was somewhat serious. He couldn't play last night, right? In a wild card game, a game that they had to have, and a game they won without him. So I'm not sure of the status just yet, Ben. We'll learn that tomorrow morning, and we'll just have to see where they are with JD Martinez or without him. One thing about the Red Sox, they put 13 players on the COVID IL between August 27th and September 12th or 13th, something like that. And they adopted kind of a next man up mentality, right? They had to.
Yeah.
Well, same thing here. And JD Martinez is a huge part of what they do, but they might have to play without him.
That's a great point. That's why you're the best right there, Ken. Next man up attitude. So the Red Sox end up winning that game, even without JD Martinez, as you mentioned. The team that did not win that game, the New York Yankees. What is that? What does the future hold for Aaron Boone? In my opinion, you got to move on. What do you think, and what are you hearing about Aaron Boone's future with the New York Yankees?
I can understand your perspective, Ben. I'm not sure I expect them to move on.
Oh, wow.
And Aaron Boone, them what they wanted after Joe Girardi. They wanted a manager who could connect with players, who could collaborate with the front office, who could remain calm in the eye of the storm. Aaron Boone, for whatever faults he might have, has done all that. So they've essentially asked him to do something or a number of things. He's done them. And now you're going to say, with a flawed team, it's your fault. I have a hard time believing this. Remember, he was Brian Cashman's handpicked guy to replace Girardi. So I would imagine Boone stays, but I'm not totally convinced of that. And the question, if you let him go, is, well, okay, who's the next guy? And that's an answer that's not necessarily so easy to come up with.
Yeah. One thing I found really interesting post-game, specifically from Aaron Boone, was his post-game comment that he made, that he feels as if the rest of the league is catching up to the New York Yankees. What did you find that odd? They haven't won a championship, Ken, since 2009. I feel like they're the ones that need to do the catching up. Was that weird?
No, Ben, I agree with you. I found that comment not like they've been up here for the last 5-10 years. Granted, they've been a playoff team, and they've been a really good team. But when he talks about the league catching up to them, well, they've come down a little bit too, and that's part of the reason they're in the position that they're in. Remember, before the trade deadline, there was a lot of commotion around this team, and I wrote a column basically saying, all right, what about the GM? What about the manager? What about the players? What are they doing? Now, they kind of saved themselves at the deadline. Cashman made those deals. They played better after that, but Gallo is totally hit or miss. Rizzo missed time, wasn't quite the same when he came back, but really had some big hits for them. And they're kind of at a crossroads, like a lot of teams in their position would be. Where do they go from here? I'm not sure. But they have a lot of decisions to make. Forget Boone and Cashman for a second. On the field, what are they going to do at shortstop? How are they going to proceed with this pitching staff? What are they going to do with Greg Gardner? Do they bring him back? Judge, do you sign him long term? There are tons of decisions. And that's what they're going to have to face no matter what they do with the GM and manager.
How do they bridge that gap? How do the New York Yankees bridge the gap and get past the Tampa Rays, the Houston Astros, the teams that have been beating them over the course of the past 5-10 years? How do they bridge that gap?
Better health would help, right? They've had a lot of injury issues. By the end of the year, their bullpen was straightened out. Severino was part of that. If he comes back to the rotation next year, that certainly helps. And Tyone, if he's healthy, a year under his belt now, that would be good. But yes, they're going to have to address all this. And I think they need to find the shortstop and put Torres back at second base, move on perhaps from Luke Voigt if LeMahieu goes back to first. They have a lot of decisions, a lot of things along these lines. How much are you going to play Stanton in the outfield going forward? Well, he seemed to be liberated a little bit by doing that. I don't know if there's a correlation there, but it certainly looked like it. So, again, pitching is where it all starts. That has to be their first priority, and that's a hard thing to build if you're not doing it like the Rays are, collecting guys and making them better.
Yep. Yeah, and you mentioned their 2 trade deadline moves. Joey Gallo is under control again next year. Anthony Rizzo being the other. Is he a New York Yankee next year?
I don't know. And certainly what I just mentioned about maybe getting a shortstop, Torres at second, and then LeMahieu at first, that would lead you to believe there's no room for Anthony Rizzo unless you put him in some kind of first base DH kind of rotation, which I don't know that he wants, and I don't know that is ultimately going to be their answer. I know A-Rod on the broadcast last night was talking a lot about how they need Anthony Rizzo. Well, it'd be tough to have Anthony Rizzo in a big-time shortstop and fit all the pieces unless you trade Torres and play LeMahieu at second, which is one way to do it. But Torres is still a relatively affordable guy, and all those other ones are going to be expensive. So I don't expect Rizzo to be on their team next year, but hey, free agency is a wild thing. We know that, and who knows what to predict.
My brother's certainly about to find out about the old free agency being chaos as well. Ken, before I let you go, you know more about baseball than anybody. You eat, sleep, breathe baseball. I got to ask you before you go, who do you have in the World Series, Ken?
Ben, I knew where you were going with this. And what you say, but my picks every year, not like every other year, they stink. And I think I know something, but the one thing the game teaches you, and it teaches even the greatest, like your brother, it's humbling to everyone. And you think you know something, you don't know anything. So I make my picks every year, but I kind of do it lightheartedly. I did pick the White Sox. I picked the Dodgers. I don't even remember if it was them or over the Dodgers or the Dodgers over them, whatever. But I'm going to be wrong. So it's just a guarantee.
Well, what does matter is that Ken Rosenthal and I have the exact same World Series champion, the White Sox. So that means the White Sox will probably not be winning the World Series this year because we predicted that. Ken, thank you so much for joining me, man. You're an absolute legend, and I'm always so appreciative when you come on this show and talk to me for a few minutes. Enjoy the rest of October and keep killing it, man.
Thanks, Ben. Appreciate it.
Of course. Thanks. Thanks for watching. If you love flipping bats, swinging 3-0, or just talking ball, join us. Call us at 213-537-9339 with your questions. We have a weekly guest, and we have a lot of fun, so hit that subscribe button.